I think one of the biggest benefits of understanding human design, your own and other people's, and even if it's not a partner relationship, just like your coworkers, if you have a business, like people who work for you, like it is like this psychological experiment, like being able to understand why people do what they do, how they're going to react to it. Like it could totally change your life. And I recommend everybody who has a spouse, a partner, kids, coworkers, like people who work for you. I mean, learning other people's human design, I mean, it will change how you interact with the world.
Welcome to Salad with a Side of Fries. I'm your host, Jen Trepic, talking wellness and weight loss for real life. We're here to clear up the myths, misinformation, bad science, and marketing to teach you how to eat and how to cheat. Are you ready? I'm having salad with a side of fries. Hey, welcome back to another episode of Salad with a Side of Fries. I'm your host, Jen Trepic. January is flying by. I cannot believe it's like mid-January to late January. Like, how is this possible already? Anyway, I'm excited for today because I feel like this is the perfect time for this conversation. We're talking about human design, and some of you may or may not be familiar with it. So we'll talk about, what it is and then how to use your human design profile to add insight for your health and your wellness and your approach to your health and wellness this year. So joining me today for this conversation is Hope Pedraza. Hope, welcome back.
Thanks, Jen. Thanks for having me back.
Absolutely. So you guys may remember Hope. She was our featured guest. It was June of 2022. The episode was called Train Your Gut, a Plant-Based Approach. I want to say it was like episode 150 or so, but June 2022, you'll find it. So I'm excited to have you. This is definitely your wheelhouse. So I'm excited for us to do this together. So
yes, me too.
I think we should probably start with like a brief intro to human design. Real quick, though, let's tell our members what they're getting this week. And we'll tell you guys about our podcast membership because I know we have a lot of new listeners this year. So if you're already a member, your recipe is for baked halibut with Brussels sprouts and quinoa. This is like bake in the oven entire meal in a single recipe. Perfect for a weeknight or just a packed day. It's, fish and two sides in less than 30 minutes. Like, cannot be beat. It's also easy to adapt for your personal preferences. Like there's olives and fennel, but if you don't like either of those, super easy swaps. So if you want this recipe or if you're ready to take one more step in the direction of your healthiest year yet, here's how you join our membership. You go to glow.fm/salad with a side of fries. For $10 a month, you get weekly recipes, a monthly article or tool, extra discounts from me and our partners, plus access to live Q&A sessions. It's a total deal. When you take advantage of the full offerings, you are saving far more than that $10 monthly cost. I say it every time. It is a no-brainer way to show yourself that your health is a priority. Plus, being a member supports this podcast and this community so that we can continue to do this for you every week because nothing would make me happier. All right, so here's what you're doing. Go to glow.fm/salad with a side of fries, or just click the link in the show notes. That's easier. Once you're there, you click support now, enter your email and payment method, click subscribe, and you're all set. You'll get this week's recipe for the baked halibut with Brussels sprouts and quinoa. All right, Hope. Let's start with what is human design. And I sort of think of it as like combining ancient wisdom, quantum physics, modern science. How do you describe it?
Yeah. That's a really good description. Yeah. So it's these ancient systems of think like astrology and the I Ching and the Kabbalah tree of life and the chakra system. And then, you put that together with some quantum physics and quantum mechanics. And then you've got this system. It's this literally the energetic blueprint of your soul. And it's a lot of people call it the science of differentiation, but it's how truly unique and individual you are as an energetic being. Really, I think using it to better understand yourself, better understand how you interact with other people and the world around you, how you best make decisions. And I think just knowing like how you are wired is really like the really powerful piece of that, understanding like you as an energetic being.
Yeah, I agree with you in that. And I think it's so interesting to say too, like understanding that it's sort of the science part
Mm-hmm.
combined with the more spiritual side of things, right? I think the average person might feel is a little more esoteric, right? But we can put these things together to create something that's actually really practical. And there's actually a lot of like integrative medicine and functional medicine practitioners that use the quantum physics side to sort of put things together to think about root cause.
Right, for sure. Yeah, absolutely. And that's essentially what I do in my practice. I'm also Reiki certified. And so being able to look at things like from an energetic level, like your chakras, and because there is a piece of that to human design, right? And we know that there are physical aspects with these energetic aspects. The chakras are associated with certain like physiological parts of the body. So it is a good way to, yes, it does seem a little like woo and out there for people, but there really is a science to all of it.
Yeah. And like you said, it's like this self-discovery, like know yourself, how you interact. And I also think too, aligned with so much of what I do in my practice, what you do and what both of our listeners talk about and look for is this positive change in life, right? Our own evolution and our own personal growth. And this is a really interesting way. I think it's an additional component for how to sort of look at those things. And for some people, I think it becomes like the explanation for why they feel a certain way or why they experience certain things. And for others, it's an insight into, oh, I might actually have a lot less stress if I tried this approach versus that one. You know?
Right, for sure. Yeah, and I think the other powerful piece of that and that kind of that self-discovery is also looking at the areas where we've been conditioned to think we have to do things a certain way, have to be a certain way or think a certain way. When you look at your human design and you're like, wait a minute, I'm designed to do it this way. So I've been doing it this other way this whole time. And no wonder it hasn't felt right because it's just not how I'm designed, to have this energetic flow and alignment. So just that deconditioning piece of like understanding that what's hardwired in your brain isn't necessarily how you're designed,
Exactly. So by the way, everybody, so the way it's calculated is it's based on your birth date, time, and location, right? And you could Google to get your chart. One that I've used is understandinghumandesign.com, and you can plug in your numbers. It takes maybe a minute, less than a minute, for it to then generate your chart. And so what we'll talk about today is some of what it tells you on that chart. So essentially there's like 5 types, and then the chart can get real complicated. Like,
yeah, real fast.
There's centers and lines and channels and all the things. And so we're going to try to keep it. This is our commitment, right? We're going to try to keep it as easy to digest, no pun intended, as possible. So let's start with the 5 types. And by the way, you're probably going to listen and this might feel confusing if you haven't done your chart to know what type you are. So maybe you need to listen again after you do your chart or pause, go do the chart because it'll take 4 seconds. And the other thing is, and I'm curious before we even talk about the types, because I think a lot of times, like when I first heard about the types, I felt like I identified with a lot of them.
So normal.
Right? And then once I got mine, I was like, oh, okay.
Yep. Now I get it. I love that you brought up that point because I think with some of the aspects of the chart too, when I'm explaining it to people, they're like, well, no, that's not me. And I think that's a really good opportunity for that deconditioning piece to think about, okay, well, if I were to look at it from this other perspective that my chart is showing, like where have I been conditioned to think the opposite? So I think it's a good opportunity to really reflect on that conditioning piece, that maybe there's some deconditioning that needs to happen. Like this is how I'm designed, and maybe I have to kind of untrain, unlearn some things.
1,000%. And the other thing is when I also learned about sort of what centers were open, that also helped explain some of the pieces of why I identified with the different types.
Yeah, for sure.
Too. So,
for sure.
All right, let's dig into it. So the first type, let's start with the manifester. So this is like 8-9% of the population. Right. I sort of think of the manifester as, it's funny. It's almost counterintuitive because the way that actually a manifester operates is what we would think is how a generator operates. But a manifester is the one who's like, go, do, kind of impulsive. Right. they're very energetic and driven, very influential, but what's interesting to me about it is that they go hard, but they have a really hard time persisting at that pace.
Their energy is not consistent. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Manifestors are the visionaries, right? Like they have the vision, they have the ideas, and they have these ideas they need to bring to life. But like you said, they don't have the consistent energy to go, 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 go. And I feel like there's a lot of deconditioning for manifestors, especially if they're around generators or manifesting generators a lot. They feel this pressure to like keep going, but their energetic type is not made for that. Like they are meant to they work in phases and where they have kind of an action phase and then they have a resting phase. And there's an intuitive piece to all of this, like tuning into intuition and all of this human design realm, but really tuning into like, their specific energetic needs are based on kind of what phase they're in, because that's a good way for manifestors to get to burnout. Because when they feel that exhaustion, it means they've done too much, like they've gone too far. Like they should have stopped before then.
Right, for sure. So that brings us to generators. So generators, by the way, this is like 35% of the population. Generators are also energetic, masters of their work, but their energy is much more sustainable. Right? I think generators can also, get frustrated when things maybe aren't happening or they plateau and feel stuck because they're such make it happen doers.
Yeah, they are. So whereas manifestors are the visionaries, generators are the doers to get it done. They take the ideas from the visionary and they do the work because like you said, they have this consistent energy. And generators and manifesting generators alike, I like to say it's like a puppy where like you have to get all the energy out before you finish the day, right? Like get all the, because I know we'll talk a little bit more about the wellness piece here in a little bit, but for generators, a lot of times when they're having trouble falling asleep or they get in bed and their mind is still racing, like, well, you need to get all the energy out, either brain dump or physically moving your body to get all of the energy out because they do have a lot of energy and it needs to go somewhere.
Yeah. But an interesting piece to me about generators is also that like they do need to kind of pause, right? And check in because their instinct is to just do. That sometimes there is something to say like pause to figure out if this is our best direction, our best choice, or just our instinct, you know?
Right. Yeah. And I think that's a good point because generators they're designed to do what brings them pleasure and joy in the moment. And they can get in this cycle of just doing and doing and doing and doing rather than checking with them like, am I really doing what lights me up? Am I really doing what brings me satisfaction? And like you mentioned frustration earlier, the not self theme, how you know you're out of alignment for a generator is frustration. And so that's the clue, like, okay, I've pushed myself too far in one direction or I'm no longer doing the things that light me up. So let me kind of reassess, redirect, and kind of figure out where I need to go from here.
Yeah. So next one I have on my list is manifesting generator. I'm a manifesting generator.
Same.
What are you?
Yeah.
Doesn't surprise me. Yeah, because manifesting generators are also like 35% of the population, like a good chunk of people. And again, it's exactly what it sounds like. It's a combination of the manifestor and the generator where we have these ideas and then do, right? So we're very energetic. We can do a lot of things at once. Multitaskers, are the manifesting generators, unless we've been conditioned to be a multitasker. There's that. We find shortcuts, right? We're pretty self-aware. We have sustainable energy. But I think there's also like still that tendency toward frustration. Maybe we skip steps because we're the shortcut,
get it
make
done
it happen,
fast.
get it done. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I also think what resonates for me a lot with manifesting generators is that it's hard to relax if there are things left on the to-do list.
Yep. For sure. Yeah. Yeah. And especially, and we'll talk a little bit about the centers, especially when you have the defined root center, it's that pressure to like, I got to get it done. But then, we have that really consistent, strong energy. Like we just have a lot of energy and And manifesting generators are really more generators than they are manifestors. So we have more of that like do. And like you said, we're multitaskers and multi-passionate, multifaceted. Like we like to do all the things and do them all at the same time. Like that's just how we're designed. And so, but then yeah, you do have to be careful that you're not taking on too much and burning out your like physical body. Like you have this physical body that's got to push you through. Like we got to take care of that part too. And so just because as a Manny-Gen, like just because you can do it all doesn't necessarily mean you always should do it all.
Totally. I also, like, again, we'll get into this, but it's, manifesting generators with their thyroid in particular. And then I also think one thing for manifesting generators, just as like a point of caution, is to make sure you're not like super busy doing nothing, right? Because we thrive on that activity and sort of busyness.
Busy work.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I think that's the big one for me in this, and I don't know if you can relate to this, the biggest piece for me when I learn about my design and I'm like, like, first of all, this makes so much sense. Like, this explains so much about myself. But two, I think there was a lot of talking about deconditioning for me because I felt for a long time, like there's all these things I want to do. I want to do this. I want to do this. I like, all these things. And I kept telling myself like, chill out, just pick one. Like, just pick one and stick with it. And I never could make myself do it. And when I learned human design, I'm like, oh my gosh, like no wonder, like I'm not supposed to just pick one thing and stick with it. I think that was a big piece for me. I was like, I can do lots of things at once. And the other deconditioning piece, I think for Manny-Gens listening, is that similar to generators where we're here to do things that light us up and bring us pleasure and bring us satisfaction. That's like the feeling that we get when we know we're in alignment, is that satisfaction. Is we can, because we're not necessarily meant to see everything through. That's what other types are for. And so we can often be seen as flaky or like indecisive or whatever, like being okay with like, it's not lighting me up anymore. So I'm going to move on to the next thing,
Yeah. So it's interesting. That's the piece that I have the deconditioning around because I have I'm challenged by letting something go.
Yep.
Like it's when I first left my full-time job in 2019, I had started the podcast and I also wrote a couple TED Talks. And then the pandemic happened. And so I stopped applying to TED Talks because with the pandemic, it wasn't going to be what I wanted it to be. Like I wanted the live audience. I wanted that thing.
Yep.
But I struggled with letting that go. And like, especially as things came back and not picking that up again. It's something like, again, we have all these things around us. Like that's definitely the conditioning.
Totally. Yeah, totally.
All right. So that brings us to projectors. So projectors are about 20% of the population. The projectors are really good at like managing and directing people. They're insightful. They're very intuitive. And they have to focus their energy to like accomplish things, but they do great things. I think one of the challenges with projectors is that they're perceived as lazy because they can burn out. Like they're super sensitive. They're not necessarily super self-aware, but they have a gift of really being able to like guide those around them. Like they see things very clearly.
Yep. They are the very perceptive problem solvers. So like if you're looking at it as like a whole, you have the manifestors, right? They have the vision. The generators and the Manny-Gens are getting everything done and bringing all. The projectors are like, I had a mentor, one of my human design mentors, she says it's like birds on a wire, where they're just kind of overseeing things. Like, what can be done better? Let's solve this problem here. Let's fix this thing here. They kind of can oversee things, and they see things in a totally different way. And my son actually is a projector. And when I was doing my kids' human design, I'm like, oh my gosh, like, it makes so much, like projectors are here to teach us things in a way no one else can teach us. So they can see the big picture differently. They just see things in such a unique way.
Yeah. It's interesting too, as you bring up, like the kids, because there's a lot of things about, how do you parent the different personality types?
Yes.
But I also think that we can all take that information for ourselves to say, what do I need in relationships?
Totally. Absolutely. I think one of the biggest benefits of understanding human design, your own and other people's, even if it's not a partner relationship, just like your coworkers, or if you have a business, like people who work for you, like it is like this psychological experiment, like being able to understand why people do what they do, how they're going to react to it. Like it could totally change your life. And I recommend everybody who has a spouse, a partner, kids, coworkers, like people who work for you. I mean, learning other people's human design, I mean, it will change how you interact with the world. It really will.
For sure. Okay, so then let's go to reflectors. So reflectors are like 1%, maybe, of the world. So like you guys are few and far between, and you are incredibly special. We all need reflectors, right? So reflectors are super talkative and passionate. They're all like peace and prosperity and love. But what's interesting, again, we'll get to the health stuff, but their health is often a reflection of their community. Like everything in their life tends to be a reflection of what's happening around them. So it's hard to know, as a reflector, it's hard to know what's yours and what you're picking up from everything around you. Reflectors might feel kind of clingy, like they need to talk through things. They need to like talk through their ideas. It's funny because like there are pieces of me that are very reflector.
Yeah, I could see that. Well, and you know, this is like getting a little bit into the weeds here, but you have your design and you have your personality. Yeah. And so part of that is your conscious and your subconscious. So for me, my subconscious is a reflector, which is totally the opposite of management. So yours could be the same. I don't know. Because when I'm looking, I'm like, oh, I have like this resonates, but it's that subconscious piece that can bring up some of these aspects of other types.
Yeah. And I also think it's the centers and whether they're defined or open that play into that too. We'll talk about that in a second. I know. And so I think in thinking about all of these things, right, these different personality types or these different energetic types are sort of the umbrella, right? And there are things that then can get more specific within it. But if this is where you're starting to understand, right? Like this is the foundation. And even just from these, we can look at how to adjust our sleep, how we operate during the day, how we define, I think a lot in terms of like how we define our own rules for ourselves or our wellness plan. And then rewards and accountability, I think, is also an interesting piece to play into this, because knowing how we respond best and what works for us, I think can save a lot of frustration for everybody.
Right.
You know?
For sure. For sure.
All right. So let's apply all of this to health things after a quick message from our partner for this episode. Give everybody a chance to let that soak in for a second. All right, so big thanks to Layered Jewelry for supporting Salad with a Side of Fries. The modern woman is multifaceted, taking on many important roles in the various aspects of her life. Inspired by her own multi-layered life as a busy mom, trendsetter, entrepreneur, and influencer, Amber Ridinger McLaughlin set out to create a line of jewelry that lets women create their unique style and celebrate their own beautiful layers. Layered is luxurious and affordable, the perfect combination for the modern woman. Layered allows you to mix, match, stack, and layer pieces that make you feel empowered and beautiful. Each piece is handcrafted to be unique and exquisite just for you. So maybe you want to give yourself something to mark this new year, the possibilities that are ahead in 2023. So I love jewelry as an anchor, right, of our commitments, our goals, or even, progress and milestones. So I highly recommend Layered Jewelry. There's a range of pieces so you can find something that resonates with you. And it's not going to break the bank. So maybe I think the Winnie stackable rings, it's like these 3 rings that are under $40 as a total. Also, some of their braided pieces are really interesting. If the braid could be symbolic, right? Or growing or becoming, all those things, everything coming together. So browse the site, find a piece that strikes you and enjoy. Plus, for being a Salad with a Side of Fries listener, you get 10% off and free shipping. Simply text the word LAYERED, LAYERED, to 844-947-4846. You'll receive the link and coupon code right to your phone. Again, simply text the word LAYERED to 844-947-4846 to get this handcrafted, luxurious, yet affordable jewelry. 10% off and free shipping. This is a toll-free number. Standard text and data rates may apply. Okay. Hope strategies for health, right? I think overall, with all of this, I sort of connect it also to the mind-body connection, right? How do you think about that in terms of just big picture with some of it?
Yeah. I mean, I think the big piece, kind of what I mentioned before, the big piece is that intuitive piece and just understanding your energy and really honoring your energy and your energetic type and using that to kind of guide you in terms of like, exercise and sleep and food and all that. Well, of course, there's specifics we can dive into, but I think the intuitive piece is a huge piece of it.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's start with sleep. I feel like that's a good place. So there are, I feel like manifestors, manifesting generators may have challenges with sleep. A lot of types can have challenges with sleep, the cause of which is sort of different, right? Manifestors need to sort of slow down and relax, right? Before they can actually fall asleep. Yeah. Which is really different because, then you have generators and manifesting generators where we got to like get it all out. If we don't have enough activity in the day, we're going to have a hard time sleeping.
For sure. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. And I think projectors and reflectors are kind of similar to manifestors in the term, especially reflectors needing to disconnect and discharge and just like letting go of whatever energy they've taken out throughout the day. So, I mean, for those three types, I'd say, giving yourself time at night before you go to bed to do whatever it is that helps you disconnect, whether it's reading or journaling or meditating, listen to music, mindless TV, like something that you can just like tune out and like let all that, whatever you've taken on during the day, go.
For sure. And I also think there are a few where you might be better off sleeping alone. Right. And a lot of times we don't even question sleeping, especially if you have a partner or whatever, right? We don't even necessarily question sleeping with another person. But if you find yourself exhausted, right, and you're a manifestor or certainly a reflector, even projectors too, like sleeping alone can be really helpful.
Yeah. Especially if your partner is a generator or manifesting generator and they literally have like the Energizer bunny inside of them. It can be exhausting to those other more sensitive types.
Yeah. Anything else on sleep before we move I mean, it sort of brought us to activity also, but.
Yeah. No. Yeah. Let's do that.
So with the activity piece, like we talked about those who need more activity, right? The generator, the manifesting generator, like we need enough activity, potentially more intense activity versus like the projector and the reflector, which are better with light activity. So like if you find yourself gravitating more toward like a Pilates than a HIIT class, you don't have to force yourself into the HIIT class.
Exactly. Yeah. No, it's so true. And I think when talking about reflectors, theirs is a lot more nuanced because it's going to depend on the day. Like it's going to depend on the time of day. Like their energy is so inconsistent depending on what they're doing and who they're around and all of that. So it's going to make a difference on whether they feel energetic enough to take on a higher intensity workout or like maybe I need to just go for a walk or sit and do meditation, right? So there's a lot more nuance there because they are so sensitive to the world around them. And then with manifesting generators, I know you can probably relate to this. I find there's this other deconditioning piece with this too, in like finding something that you really love to do. And when you don't love it anymore, pick something else. So you kind of can go through phases, right? Like you might go through a running phase and a cycling phase or a weightlifting or whatever, but knowing that it's okay to do whatever exercise you like to do in the moment. We don't like to do anymore, do something else. Like there's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah, for sure. And it's also interesting, I think with both projectors and reflectors, depending on who they're with. So like maybe group fitness is a great choice on some days, right?
Right.
And maybe
not so much on.
Yeah.
I totally agree with that. And yeah, I think especially for reflectors, that can be exhausting. Like being in a room full of a ton of people trying to work out, like, oh. So yeah, it could definitely affect their energy.
Yeah, for sure. I think before getting into sort of specific organs, I think looking too at the types to say, how do I create structure for myself when it comes to my wellness plan, right? Like you were even saying with the fitness thing, like manifesting generators might try a whole bunch of different things before saying, oh, this is the one that fits me best. And that may change over time.
Exactly.
I think the other thing for manifesting generators is like, think about it, imagine it, like play it out, visualize the whole thing in your head can be really helpful too. to sort of pull in that manifestor side. You know, I think I see it all the time. Generators feel like they're supposed to start, right? They're like, okay, it's Monday, it's January, whatever. It's, you know, I'm supposed to start. And they can feel like, why can't I keep going? And so I think for generators, like, you're going to start when you're ready. I don't know that we necessarily need to push ourselves to that.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I agree. And I think a lot of times too, I think I mentioned this earlier, but the exhaustion piece, or the piece where it's like the get up and go when it's lacking, is typically a sign that you're doing something that doesn't excite you anymore. Like, that's kind of your telltale sign. Like, well, maybe I should pick something else, you know?
Absolutely. And by the way, that is not a moral failing, right?
Totally, 100%.
And that's the conditioning piece. I think part of what you're saying before, and I want to reiterate it, is that, like, understanding that some of these things are naturally how our energy works, I think can, like, lighten the load and take the pressure off our shoulders to say, it's not about judging ourselves. It's about recognizing, understanding, and moving forward.
Yep.
And saying, okay, here's what's going to be the better fit.
Mm-hmm. For sure. For sure.
You know, I think projectors and reflectors need other people involved in their plan. I think because they're not great at recognizing their own burnout.
Right. Right.
Or their own exhaustion, or what's theirs, right? So there are certain personality types where you need an accountability buddy. You might want to listen more to the people around you who might notice your exhaustion when you don't.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. I mean, and I do think that projectors, especially projectors, have more of a tendency to burn out than other types, because, you know, they don't honor that energetic capacity that's constantly changing. And really, projectors, we were talking about sleep earlier, and I forgot to mention this, but projectors really need more sleep than other types. Like, projectors do not have consistent energy. They're only designed to work for little spurts at a time, right? A few hours at a time. And so, like, I've had a client before who's a projector, and, you know, had a call, and she was basically like getting all down on herself because she felt like she needed to take a nap most days of the week. And I'm like, freaking take a nap. Like, it's okay. It's okay to take a nap. Like, you are not meant to go all day long. Like, so I think projectors especially have more of a tendency to burn out, because I think it's also, like you said, they don't also recognize as much, like, their own limits. And so they just kind of keep going, and their battery runs out.
Yeah, for sure. And I think as we think about, you know, creating our own plan for the year, with manifestors in particular, I encourage manifestors to choose their plan, you know, to really gravitate toward, again, using that intuition, but to say, here's what my plan needs to look like for me, versus trying to abide by these prescribed rules of something out there, you know, especially for manifestors, right? To design it themselves, because if a manifestor is trying to, like, live by these rules, it's not going to work. It's going to feel stressful. And I feel like I need another word for exhausting, but that's what's coming to me, you know?
Yeah, for sure.
All right. Should we do maybe some of, like, the centers and organ systems, and, like, maybe, you know, organs of interest for each type? I mean, let's start. Where do you want to start?
Well, the head center, I think, is a good place to start. I think the head center, because the head center is associated with the pineal gland and with, you know, your circadian rhythm and all this. And I think this does show up a lot when you get kind of stuck in your head, and it affects your sleep, and it affects a lot of things going on in your head. And if you're familiar with the chakra system, this is associated with the crown chakra. And so I guess I should preface by saying this. If you're looking at your chart and you're looking at the different shapes, some of them are filled in with the color and some of them are white. So the ones that are filled in with the color are defined. The ones that are white are undefined. So you can look at your chart and kind of see where your open and or defined and undefined centers are. But I think with this center...
Wait, really quick on that. Defined centers are the ones where, like, this is what you put out into the world, right? Like, this is aspects of your personality that are all the time.
Yep. They're sturdy.
Yeah. Your open centers, your undefined centers are the ones where it's more influenced by the world around you, right? It's less consistent.
They're more fluid.
Yeah.
It's a good distinction there. That is important to know, because when you're looking otherwise, that's not going to make sense. But yeah. So I think the head center is, so this center in general is where you take in ideas and inspiration, where you kind of can ask yourself questions. But that's where we can get stuck, because we can kind of get stuck in the loop of asking too many questions, and then we get in our head too much. You feel like that mental pressure. And that's kind of one of the signs of like being out of alignment of the center. You feel that mental pressure, or maybe you're thinking about other people's problems, or it's like,
you're like
analysis
always
paralysis.
trying to figure things out. Like you have to have the answer. You're going to get to the answers.
Exactly. Yeah. And these are, when this center's out of alignment, this is when you feel things like anxiety and brain fog and like overwhelm, worry, like all of those are the feelings that kind of come up from being out of alignment in this center.
Yeah, and it connects to, like we were saying before, with the pineal gland. It's also, right, it's your circadian rhythm. It's also your whole endocrine system, right? Especially melatonin. But so we can think of, are a lot of these things making sense, right? Like if some of these things are really resonating, it's like, okay, let me focus here. Allow sort of the conversation that we're having to offer some insight in terms of where you might want to look at root causes, where you might want to dig deeper, or put a little extra emphasis in your, process this year.
Mm-hmm. Do we want to go through all of them, or do you want to just pick a few to go through?
Yeah, I think a big one is will. Because, I don't know about you, but in my practice, we have a lot of conversations about willpower.
Oh,
and
totally.
on this podcast, we've had a lot of conversations about willpower. And especially if your will center is undefined, right? It tracks then that we may be more influenced by our environment around us, and we think we have no willpower, but yet we're just surrounded by people who are making different choices, and that makes things more challenging for us. The will center is also connected to like the heart, the stomach, the gallbladder, the thymus. So looking at some of these things to say, where can you manage your energy? How can you better manage that endurance piece and the resources that you have, whether your will center is defined or open?
I agree with you. This is a tough one to work through with clients for me sometimes too. I find it helpful when my clients have the undefined will center, ego center, whatever you want to call it, is when we're looking for the willpower, if you will, to look at a different center. So whether that's, maybe we look at the heart center and maybe we use that as our motivation and doing it for self-care and out of self-love. So like, where can we find another place in the body where it feels more resonant? Because like for me, and I know we work with people in different capacities, I'm working with people who are dealing with really chronic things. Some of them are pretty serious. Yeah. So like when we're not sticking with the protocol, it sends us like 12 steps back really fast. And so it's not so much like, oh, let's stick with this diet or else it's more like, hey, like our health is relying on you sticking with this protocol. So it's looking elsewhere on our chart where can we find that quote unquote willpower from somewhere else, whether it's the heart or it's the head or it's, maybe it's the emotional center, like finding somewhere else to kind of bring in that like drive,
Yeah. And in looking at that, right, you're looking at what are your other centers, what centers are defined, where that is really sustained energy and a piece that you can rely on. And you were talking about, some health conditions. Like I always think, the identity center is connected to the liver. So like if you're not detoxifying properly, right, this is connected to your life direction and love and the sense of self. And so if you're challenged by a lot of those things, like let's look at how you're detoxifying. Let's look at the liver. We're going to actually do a lot on detoxification later this year, in like a month or so. But I think it's really interesting. And now I'm like skipping around, but it's as it's coming to me, like with the throat, the thyroid, the parathyroid, like a lot of times, traditional Chinese medicine that talks about how thyroid goiters and even tumors or thyroid conditions can be a function of not speaking your truth.
Totally. That's all of it. Yeah. That's what, when you learn, we go deep into the chakras and Reiki training, and that's a huge piece. And it's funny you say that because that's been a big piece for one of my clients I'm working with. We've been talking a lot about her throat chakra. Her biggest vice at the moment is smoking. And so, and that is a telltale sign of a blocked throat chakra. That's like a vice that shows up when your throat chakra is blocked. And so we started diving in, and sure enough, once we kind of dove deeper into it, she tells me about this narcissistic relationship and all these things that I've never been able to speak my truth. And like, it all just came out. And I'm like, oh my gosh, this makes total sense. And it is 100%. It's the throat chakra. It's not speaking your truth, not being true to who you are, because your throat center is it's your projected voice. It's your manifested voice. It is how you speak your truth. And so it's 100% will show up in the throat chakra. And they're the throat center. Yeah.
Yeah. You brought this one up before, but the root, the root, by the way, is, if you're looking at your chart, it's like all the way down almost at the bottom, right? It's connected to adrenaline.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a piece where it's like you might feel panicked or anxiety or you might notice that you gravitate toward adrenaline inducing activities, right? Or maybe you really need that caffeine, right? Again, those are some of the pieces that play into this. But also to say too, if the root is open for you, be careful with caffeine. Be careful with some of these other things. You'll be more susceptible, I think, or sensitive to that stimulation.
Right. Yeah, for sure. And this one, I find this one and the emotional center, I feel can be a big one for clients that I work with. But the adrenal part for sure, because this is tied to our adrenals. So, have the same experience. People are running their adrenals ragged these days. And so this is a big one, just kind of looking at, okay, where are we out of alignment here? Because the root center is a pressure center. So that's where that pressure comes up to get stuff done. I've got to do things. I've got to, check off my to-do list, and I'm always in a hurry, or, to be free of the pressure. And so that's where it shows up. And your adrenals take the hit when this one's out of alignment.
Yeah. And so you just brought up, the emotional. So this is the emotional solar plexus. So I'll let you start this one.
Yeah, I really like this. And this is one, when I work with my clients, we don't, unless they want to use one of their sessions in this way, we don't dive into all, because again, like we said at the beginning, this can get real. Yes, it's a lot. But this is a center I always like to really hone in on, because it is our emotional center. And as me and you and most of everybody listening knows, that emotions have a lot to do with our health, right? Emotions can be stored as chemicals in the body when we don't emote them. Like emotions are energy in motion. They're meant to stay in motion. And I find it no coincidence that the organs that are associated with the emotional center are so many of our detox organs, your kidneys, your bladder, your pancreas. There's so many things that show up when we are not allowing ourselves to, feel the things or move through all the things. So I think that for a lot of my clients, we're having issues with detox or drainage pathways or whatever. We've got some serious work to do on the solar plexus or on this emotional center. You're not giving your body permission to let go of toxins because we haven't let go of these emotions. And so I think this is a really important center. And especially for mine, I don't know about yours, mine is open. And so it's one of my very few undefined centers that I have. But when it's open, especially, you are sensitive to other people's emotions. You can really take on the weight of the world on your shoulders because your center is open. And so it takes a lot of self-awareness and a lot of tuning inward to kind of discern what's mine and what's somebody else's in this center, especially because if you're not careful, if you're not mindful, you really can take on everybody else's emotions, and it can sit really heavy in your body.
Yeah. It's almost like that for all of this, right? It's that self-awareness piece and recognizing, where we step on the gas, where we pull back. And a big piece of it is recognizing when we're in the flow, when things feel right. And I'm trying to think of less woo-woo ways to describe it, right? But when it's fun, when there's progress, when, it feels ease, those are the indications of do more in that direction, do more of those things. I think the last one that I really think is important, like we said, you could dig into every single one of these, but I think the spleen is particularly interesting for this time of year because it's so connected to immune function. So it's spleen, lymph nodes, your immune system. It's also survival and intuition. And I think sometimes there's a push and a pull between intuition, following your gut, and survival of, we think so much, again, the conditioning of survival, I think it plays into some of the challenges with this.
Yeah, for sure. I agree with you. This is another center that I hone in with my clients because it is centered around our immune system and our intuition, and that's such a huge piece. And I think the other important piece to note is that this is also the center where our fears show up, and understanding how that shows up and how that's kind of connected to some of our other centers. And, we're not going to talk about the gates and the channels and all of that, but there are ways to kind of track where that's coming from and like how to, what's the word I'm looking for? I don't know what the word I'm looking for is, but basically just trying to like work backwards, right? To kind of figure out like where that fear is coming from and really being able to tune into your intuition, because really that fear is us blocking out our own intuition. And so understanding that piece too.
Absolutely. And it's interesting to, like, if this is an open center for you, you're probably more sensitive to alcohol, even medications, right? Like homeopathy is probably a really good thing for somebody who has, an open spleen center versus, the people who, where it's more, where it's defined, like it's a powerful immune system. You probably don't get sick as easily from somebody around you, that kind of a thing. And probably like other people may notice you're sick before you do. So again, like having those other people around you who, have sort of different elements to help us in our own wellness, right? Like I talk a lot about communities a lot of time and who we surround ourselves with. And that plays into all of this too,
For sure. Definitely. Yeah. Yeah. And I think speaking of community, this is like totally off topic, but you said community, it always makes me think of reflectors. I think especially for reflectors, which you mentioned before, but I think because all of their centers are open. So just going back to reflectors, I don't know if you mentioned this before, but reflectors, if you are a reflector, you have all of your centers open. So you have no defined centers. So that is how sensitive you are to the energy around you. And I think especially for reflectors, community and your environment and your alone time, like all of that is important to you to be able to discern what's yours, what's somebody else's, and you just take in so much. So that piece is really crucial for a reflector.
Yeah. And like we said, I mean, I think we did a lot. There's a lot more we could still say, and a lot of pieces of your human design chart that we didn't talk at all about. I guess, I think this is a good place to sort of put a pin in it. I mean, Hope, final thoughts, how do we wrap this up? And then I'll share sort of what's coming to me in this moment.
Yeah. I think final thoughts, even just understanding the basics of your chart, I think is, even if you don't go into the depths of, because again, there's so much to go into, but even just understanding the basics. And I'll give my recommendation too. I know you gave your recommendation on the site. I like to use myhumandesign.com. Jenna Zoe does that one. And I think she does a good job of really simplifying it. And she goes through some pieces that some other sites don't. So it talks about your preferred environment and your digestion. And just those little pieces, even just looking at the basics of it when you're not going super deep into it can be helpful. But just knowing your type, your signature, your not self-theme, like just the basics from like just the free chart you get on the internet can be so helpful in just understanding how you work and how you work, like we said at the beginning, and bringing in that intuitive piece and really tuning into your intuition to understand your kind of your energetic waves and how your energy moves and how your energy changes, and being able to honor that with how you move and how you eat and who you're around, who you surround yourself with. Like there's a huge intuitive piece to your wellness that I don't think is talked about enough. And I think this is like the perfect marriage of that, being able to kind of connect like the physical and the spiritual part of that, putting it all together.
Totally. And we'll put links to both sites in the show notes. And I think, the thing for me with all of it is like, this is about you being you and following your path and your decision-making strategy based on your type. And I also say to everybody, like, take what fits for you and ditch what doesn't. Like, we don't have to get stuck on the pieces that, aren't making sense to us. And I think, we talked a lot about this in the context of health, but it really does apply to every aspect of our life. And in particular, a lot of human design talks about life purpose, and I say it all the time. Like, I believe that a lot of our health stuff, and in my world, food stuff, is standing in the way of a lot of our life's purpose. And when we can figure that out, it frees up this mental capacity, that we can put that mental capacity to like bigger, better things.
Right, for sure.
And, I see a lot of my clients, they're like, yeah, I don't even know what that would even be. Because, maybe it's been since they were a kid that there's been that capacity to go to something else.
They haven't been able to even like go there mentally. Yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And so a lot of times people ask the question like, well, what's needed? Right? Like I'll do what's needed. And one of the human design books I read had this quote that struck me and sort of put all of it together. And it's coming to me in this moment. So I'll share it with you guys. And it's ask not what the world needs. Ask what makes you come alive. Then go do it. Because the world needs more people who have come alive.
I love that. That's amazing.
So may you come alive in 2023.
That's it. This is your year.
Amazing. Hope, I think we did it.
Yeah, this was great. I love this conversation so much.
I know. I can't wait to hear you guys tell us your feedback. What's sticking with you? What did you learn where it was like the light bulb moment, the weight lifted? I can't wait for everybody to run their chart. Do you have another minute to hang out for our nutrition nugget?
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay, awesome. So this week, we're talking about pomegranate. So I love this one because it's seasonal for this time of year, and we don't often think about fruit in the winter. Although admittedly, January is sort of the end of the season for it, but we got it in. So as usual, we'll go through what it is, what it offers, and how we might incorporate it. So pomegranates are these round red fruit. They have this inner flesh that's white and like pretty tough. Like you don't eat that. What you eat are the inner seeds called the arils, and they're densely packed. I sort of think of them almost like tiny grapes, like if they were seeded grapes, but super tiny because they are juicy. And like the seed is like the crunchy center, but like you eat the center versus like with a grape with a seed, you wouldn't eat the seed. I feel like they grew in popularity a few years ago, maybe more than a few years ago. Like in my head, it's connected to the like Sex and the City Cosmopolitan martini fad. I don't know if that's true.
That's probably accurate.
I don't know if that's really true, but like that's what it is in my head. But what's interesting is like with all of that, it was pomegranate juice that became super popular. So we'll talk about sort of the nutrition of the seed and then what we get from the juice. So a typical pomegranate has about 1.5 to 2 cups of seeds in them. A serving size is about 1/2 cup of the seeds. This gives us 72 calories, 16 grams of carbs, 3.5 grams of fiber, 1 gram of fat, 1.5 grams of protein. So honestly, if you're looking at 1/2 cup of seeds with that, I mean, it's packed with fiber and gives us some protein too. I mean, that's a lot in a little bit, And again, like a key factor to remember is that like the whole food is not the same as the juice, right? Drinking the juice by way of nutrition, right? So I looked the Pom Wonderful brand because I feel like that's the one that everybody thinks of. So they're 100% pomegranate juice. Serving size was 8 ounces, 160 calories, 0 grams of fat, 0 grams of protein, 39 grams of carbohydrates, 0 grams of fiber, 34 grams of total sugar. I know your face. You're like, whoa. Right. And then on the micronutrients, there's 20 milligrams of calcium, 0.2 milligrams of iron, 550 milligrams of potassium, like basically nothing, to be honest. So as we go through some of these health benefits, I don't know that we could truly say we're going to get these health benefits from the juice because I think while you can get some of the antioxidant pieces, we'll talk more about this, like a lot of this nutrition, a lot of vitamins, minerals, your macro micronutrients, you're not getting from the juice. So having said that, a lot of the health benefits come from antioxidants. So pomegranates are rich in antioxidants and what we call polyphenolic compounds. The main ones in pomegranates, and I'm probably going to say these wrong, so just bear with me. It's punicalgins, anthocyanins, that one I know, hydrolysable tannins. So Antioxidants we talk about all the time, right? They fight oxidative stress, those free radicals, which is essentially internal rust, which turns into inflammation. So anything inflammation related is likely to benefit from antioxidants. So we think about heart disease, type 2 diabetes, cancer, Alzheimer's, allergies, arthritis, like that's just naming a few, but essentially the root of all symptoms, illness, disease is inflammation. We can dig into it. There is some research. The punicalgins have been shown to have antioxidant and anti-inflammatory properties in test tube and animal studies. We certainly need more human research across the board on everything related to pomegranates. What we see so far is that it could reduce the markers of inflammation in the body. The ellagitannins act as antioxidants as well, and they potentially offer brain protection. So they produce a compound in the gut that then shows it has the ability to reduce inflammation in the brain and delay the onset of cognitive diseases. So think Alzheimer's, Parkinson's. It also helps increase the survival of brain cells, which is interesting. The same studies also showed support for recovery from hypoxic ischemic brain injury, which I think is fascinating. Again, we need more research, but there's something really interesting there. Also connected to antioxidant activity, test tube studies show that compounds in pomegranate fruit juice and oil may help kill cancer cells or slow the spread of cancer in the body. We see anti-tumor effects in lung, breast, prostate, skin, and colon cancers. Also in liver cancer. So really interesting things here. We need more human studies. I keep saying it because don't go buying the store out of pomegranate, but it's interesting. Heart health is another piece. Again, it's these polyphenolic compounds, the antioxidants. There was a study where researchers saw pomegranate extract could reduce oxidative stress and inflammation in the arteries, lower blood pressure, and help fight atherosclerosis, which is like the plaque that builds up in the arteries, and that's what often leads to heart attacks and strokes. A test tube study and human studies are kind of lacking to give us, true clarity, but there's one where they gave people with heart disease a cup of pomegranate juice daily for 5 days. The juice significantly reduced the frequency and severity of chest pain and reduced the biomarkers of, basically heart health. So there's some research that shows reduced formation of kidney stones with pomegranate extract. And this could be connected because animal studies showed that pomegranate extract can help regulate the concentration of oxalates, calcium, and phosphates in the blood, which then often turn into kidney stones. Maybe more interesting to the average person is there's potentially an increase in exercise endurance with pomegranate extract taken 30 minutes before running. There's mixed evidence on the endurance piece. There's even more mixed evidence on whether or not it supports recovery. So you could try it for yourself, see if, part of your pre-workout is some pomegranate seeds, if you notice a difference. We see immune health and gut health support because I think a lot of it has to do with the fiber, right? Remember, we had 3.5 grams of fiber in just a half a cup of the seeds. So test tube studies showed there was almost like a prebiotic effect, which doesn't surprise us. They also see pomegranate having antimicrobial properties, which can help fight bacteria, fungi, yeast in studies. And then we talked about oral care the other week. And so this applies there too. The antimicrobial effect of pomegranate may also protect against unwanted oral germs, which I think it's fascinating. So we want to add them in. Cool. The first challenge is getting to the seeds inside that thick inner flesh. And if you've ever done this, you know exactly what I'm talking about. So your first warning, by the way, is that pomegranate juice can stain. So my favorite approach to this is, number one, just buy the seeds in a container instead of buying the whole pomegranate. But I also get that that's not the most economical approach. So more economical, buy the pomegranate, cut it in half, and then submerge it in water, whether it's in your sink or a bowl. And then while under the water, you can use your fingers to get the seeds out. If you look on the internet, there's like a million different ways, and everybody thinks that their way is the best way to get to the seeds of a pomegranate. It's like, how many licks does it take to get the center of a Tootsie Pop? So like there's another one where it talks about like you cutting it in a certain way and then it sort of opens like a flower and then it's easier to get to all the seeds. Like I like the water one or just buying the seeds. Once you have the seeds, sprinkle them onto a salad, a smoothie bowl, add them to a smoothie, put them on, yogurt, quinoa, veggie sides. It goes really well with poultry. Also delicious with avocado. So like avocado toast, add some pomegranate seeds. I've also just had them, especially when I buy just the container of the seeds, I'll eat them by the spoonful with some nuts as a great snack. Get creative. It's like a sweet little punch, right? All in, I think we need more research. It's unclear whether, juice extract or seeds give us the quantities of the antioxidants that are going to be needed for these benefits. But when we look at the nutritional value, the seeds are certainly our best bet with the protein and fiber. So grab some pomegranate at your next grocery run. Hope, what do you want to add? What else?
I love pomegranates. I don't have anything to add. All that was fascinating. I love pomegranates, but no, for me, it's such a pain. I would much rather buy the seeds in the little container.
I know, right?
But they're so good.
Sure. For sure. And I just love that they're seasonal in the winter. Like, yay for winter fruit when you live in a cold climate.
Yes, for sure.
Well, Hope, thank you again for being here.
Thank you for having me, Jen. Thanks for this conversation. It was awesome.
Yes, I loved it. I appreciate you. As always, everybody, I'm your host, Jen Trepeck. Connect with me on Instagram or all social media. I am at Jen Trepeck, JENNTREPECK. Our website is asaladwithasideoffries.com. Send us your questions, your takeaways, any ideas you have for topics you want to cover. Reaching out, whether through social media or the website, is the easiest way to learn more about working with me as your health coach. Of course, if you are not already a member, join our membership by going to glow.fm/saladwithasideoffries to support this podcast, this community, but most importantly, support your health this year. You'll get this week's recipe for the baked halibut with Brussels sprouts and quinoa. So I hope you'll get your human design chart if you haven't already. Maybe re-listen to this episode knowing your personal type and your personal strategies, because it's all about working with who you are, to know yourself, love yourself, and live with ease. Well, friends, that's it for today's episode of Salad with a Side of Fries. Congratulations for making yourself and your health a priority. Thanks so much for joining us. Be sure to click subscribe or follow on your favorite podcast platform. Share us with a friend, and we'll be back next week. Always remember, you deserve it, and you are worth it. Happy healthy.